Hello, and welcome to Chalk Talk with the Doc, a podcast where we talk to Olympic and professional athletes about their injuries, recovery, and what it takes to be a champion. So I am your host, Dr. Megan Braun, and I have a special guest with me today. She is a pro women's lacrosse player and champion. We have Christina Esposito. Welcome to the show.
Woo! Thank you for having me. I'm so excited to talk. I love talking, especially about injuries and mentality and lax, and I just like talking in general. So I'm excited.
This will be fun.
Yes.
All right. So I'm going to do a little intro on you, kind of give everyone your accolades, if you don't mind, dote on you a little bit. All right. So Christina Esposito, she played at Northwestern. At Northwestern, she was a two-time captain, Tewaaraton watch list nominee, which for those of you that don't watch lacrosse, the Tewaaraton is kind of like the Heisman of lacrosse. She was an all Big Ten selection and two-time Big Ten all-tournament team selection. She was also the all-region two-time IWLCA selection as well. Then she went on to play pro lacrosse after Northwestern, where she played with the UWLX, which is the United Women's Lacrosse League. And there she played 2 seasons, 2017 and 2018, correct? Right. And she was a UWLX Champion and MVP of 2017. So big things happening with Christina Esposito. So I wanted to bring her on to the show. As you guys know, we talk a little bit about injury, each athlete's different kind of recovery that they go through, their mindset, and how they brought themselves back up to the top and how they regained that champion mindset. So Christina, I want to thank you again for being here. I'm just going to call you Espo for the rest because
yeah.
Yeah, you're not my mom. Well, Espo, can you tell us a little bit? Well, first off, just start off with how you started playing lacrosse, how you got into the sport, why you love it, why you still love it, and kind of go from there.
Yeah, long journey in that part, but I started playing kind of late, I guess, for Long Island. You usually start when, you're first out there. The second you're able to hold a stick, you have a stick in your hand in Long Island.
Yeah.
But I started kind of late. I was a soccer, basketball kind of kid. I loved playing every sport, anything competitive I'm all about. But I started playing around 5th grade, not really seriously. One of my friends, when I was in 6th grade, one of my friends was playing a year above me, and she kind of inspired me to play. I saw the pace of the game. I actually was such a soccer girl. Every single time I was like, soccer rules, like everything else drools. I had the shirt and everything,
yeah, those no fear shirts back in the day.
Yeah, absolutely. I had all of it. Like, what was it? Offense sells tickets, defense wins championships. That was a big of mine. But I started playing around 6th grade, and the pace of the game I just fell in love with, like the aggression and the pace of the game. And I actually first started learning too with a boy stick, and I always say that I think that made such a difference in my stick work, especially. My brother was playing. He's older than me. I'm the youngest. So my brother was playing, and I picked up a stick because of him, and he's the one who kind of taught me how to cradle and stuff, how to catch in our front yard.
Nice. Yeah. Nice. So what grade was that you started?
About 6th grade.
6th grade. Nice. Yeah. All right. And then you played in high school. Tell me a little bit about your high school experience.
Yeah, my high school experience, thankfully, West Babylon gets a lot of good talent in and out. Shannon Smith went there, Alyssa Murray. I know there's a bunch of girls, like some girls are playing at Florida now who just graduated from there. So thankfully, when I was on the team when I was a freshman for 4 years, obviously. And when I was a freshman, I wasn't that good. Like I could catch with my left hand, and I was aggressive. And I loved hustling. I played other sports, so athletic, but I wasn't like the best player on the field at all. And I kind of earned a spot my freshman year. And then my sophomore year, that summer, that's like a pivotal point too, 9th grade to 10th grade year. Like, yeah. I feel like players kind of really develop. So my 10th grade year, I finally like really, really got into it. I was like, I want to go to college, play this sport. And then that year we played with my team had maybe like 5 to 10 girls already going to D1. So I actually had like a pretty sound group help me develop when I was in 10th grade. Then 11th grade was kind of a rebuilding year. And then my senior year, I had a great team. I had a class of girls who really weren't going to play lacrosse in college, but we were all just so kick-ass and passionate. We had such an awesome team, and we weren't expected to do anything. And our senior year, we went almost undefeated. We beat reigning state champs, and we got pretty far. For our town, doesn't usually get too far. So my senior year, it kind of all came together.
Nice. So then when you were deciding to go play in college, how did that process work out for you? What did you do?
Well, little me, I think I wrote in my like 5th grade graduation book that like I was going to go play basketball at like UNC. So
I know how that is. That was me too. I was like, I'm going to play basketball at UConn.
Yeah.
Little 5'2" me, you got to dream big.
Yeah, exactly. I only grew to 5'3", so the basketball dreams kind of went out the window with that. But I think, like I said, I was always a soccer girl, and that wasn't until my 9th grade year of high school is when I started playing outside lacrosse. And once you get into like club lacrosse, it's more about going to college and getting seen. And so that kind of opened the door. And then 10th grade year, I started going to camps, and I'm a big like go to camps. You get to see the school, the team, the players.
Yeah.
I think that's so much better than just playing in a tournament. They have different purposes, but that's really kind of how I started. Even with Northwestern, was I went to a couple of their camps, and even Syracuse, I went to one of their camps, and from there I kind of just I'm such a competitive person that like I compete with myself. And I wanted to play at one of the best schools, one of the top schools. I wanted to play with people who cared a lot and people who wanted to win. That was like my one thing. I want to go at it. I want to win, and I want to be competitive. So there were obviously like some top teams that I was looking at because I was so competitive too. But when it came down to it, I think Northwestern kind of embodied and encompassed everything. Like they had, the academic side of it, the like discipline, hustle side of it, the athletic side of it, and then just reigning at lacrosse too. Because at my time, I think that was in like 2010, that was like their super all-star moment too. They kind of really held the reins during those couple of years. So they really inspired me.
Awesome. So you go to college, you're like, yes, I get to play lacrosse.
Yeah.
I get to have a good time.
We need a violin.
Tell me what happens. Yeah. The tiny violin. Here we go. Tell me what happens. Let's relive the moment.
That's the hardest part, I think, of all of this and kind of a broader spectrum thing is that when you go into college, I think most girls, most players just have this idea of what it's going to be, what you want it to be, and just a vision of what you see yourself doing. And even before my first injury was when I was a freshman, so I'll get there. But even before that, I was struggling. I was, I came from a public school in Long Island, and, sports were my big thing. I wasn't great at school at all by any means.
Yeah.
I'm a hard worker. You know what I mean? I adapt and I can do things that way, which is great. But at the same time, it was really hard for me to be away from Long Island. I'm such a homebody girl. Away from New York. My attitude didn't fit in too much in the Midwest. So it was
New York's a little different than the Midwest.
Yeah, definitely. It was a little bit of like a culture shock, an academic shock, and even a lacrosse shock. So it was really, really tough for me. And I remember like, there was points my freshman year before being injured that I was like, I might have to like go home. Like this, I don't know if I could do it. And then I finally kind of, you go through your moments, especially freshman year, and you kind of figure your support, you figure out, you get all your things in order. And then I was doing so great. I was so happy for myself because I was in such a deep place, I guess, in the beginning of my freshman year. So then when I got to it was in March, I believe, I was finally starting. I was starting on attack, I believe. And I was doing so well. I was finally like playing myself. And that's when you go to college, I feel like you always just want to play like high school you. Like I don't want to leave that. You know what I mean? That was me. That's who I was. So kind of different because you have to like, you know, reshape yourself as an athlete too. But I was finally just playing like myself and grooving. And you know, when you get in that groove, like you're just unstoppable. And I think I got like rookie of the week 1 week, and then the following week, everything just life, complete flip, complete shift. One day it was, I think we were playing Ohio State, and we had a walkthrough at like 11 a.m. and I was starting the play. And in my head, I think I went to do like a face dodge and a roll dodge at the same time. And I planted on my left knee. So when I did that, I heard pop, 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 pop. And I immediately went to the ground. And all I remember is my teammates and everyone saying that like I screamed like I got shot or something. I always think about how it happened. Obviously, you know, after you get injured too, all you do is sit there and you're like, how did it happen? Could I have done something else? What happened here? So many questions pop up, and it really kind of like taunts at you. And so I thought about it a lot, but 2 plays before it happened, I was running the play and I ran it wrong. Like I went behind the net when I was supposed to go to the front of it or something. And I remember Kelly stopping and being like, Espo, do you remember? Like you're supposed to go there, not there. And I was like, oh yeah, like I remember being like, I just like blacked out. Like I wasn't even kind of here. And the week before this, or 2 weeks before this, was actually our spring break. So you have usually 2-a-days. It's like all lax, all training during spring break if you're a spring athlete. And I remember being exhausted. I just remember being so tired that my legs felt heavy. And I think it showed when I think back now is that I was so tired that I wasn't mentally in it. Like I wasn't mentally present. Not that I wasn't in it. Obviously I was trying hard, but there's a difference between trying hard and rushing and just trying with purpose. So yeah, I really do think that a lack of like recovery, rest, and then just mental presence is kind of how that traumatic of an injury happened.
Yeah, I think, you know, kind of going off what you're saying is sometimes when all those factors come together, especially, you know, during spring break, and I remember our spring breaks, you know, or even like when I played basketball in college, our Christmas breaks, you know, we weren't eating the greatest sometimes, we weren't drinking a lot of water, right. You know, we weren't resting as much as we should have. Instead, it was like, okay, let's watch some movies or let's go out and do something else, right? But you know, when you kind of take that into account of not getting those things in, and then that really, really important mental aspect, you know, kind of tuning in with your body and listening to your body. And then when you're out on the field, knowing what your body's supposed to be doing when you're supposed to be doing it. Like I see knee injuries all the time with athletes because of that stuff, because they don't know how they're supposed to be pivoting. And just because you're doing a sport or just because you've been working out in whatever this is for however many years doesn't mean you know how to do it like 100% properly all the time unless you train that way. Right. So yeah, I think that's a great point.
That's one of the biggest things. That's why I actually like training girls now too, privately and in groups and stuff, is because I've been there before. And you know, I was never taught how to cut. I didn't get taught. I don't think I learned how to cut until maybe going into my 5th year of college.
But even still, you know, sometimes when we go into like that blackout moment or almost like autopilot, right? Yeah. When we're in autopilot, that does mean usually that you're more tired. But if you don't train yourself, you know, like let's say that you're doing a one-on-one lesson, right? If I'm not training with you to when I'm in that fatigue mode but I'm still focusing on what I'm doing, that means my autopilot is not going to direct me where I need it to go, right? There's 2 different ways autopilot can go. Autopilot can go good or it can go bad.
You can control it or you can control it. Yeah,
exactly. Sure. And so I think that's what a lot of athletes, especially younger athletes and you know, obviously like professional athletes too.
Athletes just kind of, we do our thing and we don't know that there's another level of like mental presence that comes with it.
Yeah. And you just kind of skate by on your athletic ability without, you know, putting those extra steps in, which is kind of that championship mindset, right? And that's a lot of what I preach, like with body mechanics, is the restore part, the develop part, and the strengthen part, because you have to have all those different things, like restoring your mindset, developing plans, and like understanding what your plan is going to be, and then strengthening to make those things stronger so that you can be the best that you can be. And you can't really do that without one of those parts. So, yeah, I'm glad you brought that up.
And it is important to note too that like doing all those steps, the byproduct of that is being a champion or being a great athlete. And, you know, we always think about the destination of like, I want to be like Michael Jordan. Like, I want to be the greatest lacrosse player. But all those steps are what gets you there. So it's like, if you focus on the destination, you'll probably miss those steps and not get to where you want to go. Because that's what I realized out of my first injury, is that I really just wasn't too mentally present. But I do have to say, I have never been severely injured like that before. So I kind of went tumbling down after that, especially mentally. Like I didn't realize it, and I didn't put a label on it in the moment, but I was so depressed. I mean, I was messing up. I wasn't even playing, and I was kind of messing up. So, I mean, you can just imagine, you know, like your head is in so many different places. You're away from home. You're trying to do, I mean, Northwestern's a very, very well-educated, well-rounded school, and I'm trying to sit in class. I'm on medication. I'm trying to read, and the sentences are like, you know, just all
blurring together. Yeah.
My tank was just empty. It was just empty, and I was so devastated and so upset that I finally felt like I was like about to touch what I came here to do, what I wanted to do, and it is like someone just completely knocked you out. You know, in that first round, we definitely had ACL, and that was, you know, there's different ways you can tear your ACL. Some girls on our team did partial tears, and what I was told was mine completely ruptured and coiled back in my knee, so they couldn't even find it, is what I was told at first. So that just kind of sets the tone for, I guess, the level of ACL tear it was. And then inside you have the meniscus. So those are those two round discs that kind of cushion me. So like I always I go like this, and then I always show that like there are the two round circles there, and when your knee pounds, they cushion. So both of those tore. And
medial and lateral?
Yes, both medial and lateral. But the lateral was worse, and the lateral side had a bone contusion, a pretty bad, deep bone contusion. So bone contusion is also when the ligament's not there and the bones hit together.
Yeah, it's basically a bone bruise. Right.
So that's what happened on the first one. We also had MCL. I don't know if that's on here.
Yep. This guy in here.
Yep. MCL is the other side of your LCL.
LCL is out here. Yep.
Right. So the medial is the inside, and the lateral is the outside part of your leg. That's how I always remember it. Or lateral with bearing.
Yeah.
I've been to PT school already. And then I believe the PCL, which is behind the ACL.
Yeah. So the ACL, this is like a shadow view. So this is your patellar tendon, part of your quad, and then like if you looked through your patellar tendon, your ACL is the one that comes in the front onto your medial meniscus, has attachments there, and then the PCL is the one that's kind of in the back. You can see back there. Yep.
Right.
So basically, all those ligaments. Which come back to you.
Yeah, it explains all the different popping sounds that I heard.
And then
hear one.
It's a ton of instability in that knee now, because all those ligaments, they're kind of like your safety, your stopgap, right? So if your hamstrings and your quads aren't doing what they need to do when you're fatigued, when you're trying to cut, pivot, not really paying attention, and then you turn a weird way, then all those ligaments have to stop that. And then if they're not trained on how to do that and kind of like have that tensile strength, then that's when you start to get the injuries. Yep. So did you have like a reconstruction type surgery then, or what?
Yeah.
What did they do?
I used my hamstring to reconstruct my ACL. I mean, I didn't do it, but the doctor used my hamstring. There's 3 different ways you can go with a cadaver. You can use your patella tendon or your hamstring to fix an ACL. And at that time, hamstring was relatively new, but kind of on the forefront of what doctors were, thinking about trying over patella and cadaver. So I tried hamstring. And that was also hard because, then you're rehabbing your hamstring also when you're coming back.
Yeah.
But I had I had ACL reconstruction using hamstring, and then they tried to clean out whatever part of the meniscus was there, and they also fixed whatever part of the meniscus was there. So I was not weight bearing for maybe like 2 months after, or 1 month.
Yeah.
No, it's about 2. It's like 6 to 8 weeks of crutches, So imagine being on campus.
Yeah, I was going to say, you're in school.
you have treatment at 2, you have class at 3, you have practice at 5, like, and then you have to go downstairs or across the way to eat at the dorm. So I feel for so many athletes that are injured in college, especially because you're away from home and you are just kind of on an island. And although, colleges give a ton of support, I'll never knock that. I had some of the best support, athletic trainer and stuff, but it's hard. You're by yourself, like it's a very transforming experience.
So what kind of support systems, or like who did you lean on to kind of get you through all those motions and movements?
Yeah, I actually it's a weird experience when you're injured, especially in college, because obviously the coaches have to focus on the team. Obviously the coaches have to focus on the people who are on the field, because that's what you came to do. And you can't get mad at that being injured, but it hurts. It hurts so much, being on the sideline. And I remember even watching someone go into the spot that I was in, and not that I was like mad or anything, but I just remember watching that and being so sad. Like I was so sad at practice watching. I really was. I didn't even want to do my rehab exercises. I know it's hard and you have bad days, but you have to be able to support yourself. You have to combat whatever thought it is of like, oh, today sucks. So like, no, maybe I'm in a bad mood, but today's not going to suck. Like little things like that, just being your own mascot. But at Northwestern, I think my biggest support was my athletic trainer. She is the only reason I'm still playing 100%. So when I couldn't do anything physical, my mental just went insane, So I actually did try to go to the psychological services that were offered at Northwestern, and it's a sports psychologist. So, it's not someone who knows nothing about sports, but I didn't really like it personally. I felt like, it was more of, I felt like I was just kind of going back and forth about the bad things that were happening, and I didn't have a lot of solutions. And that could be different for everybody's situation. Maybe it was the person I met with, maybe it was me not being open-minded at the time, whatever it was. I didn't feel like it really helped too much. So outside of my athletic trainer and trying to do that, I really stuck with my family so much. Family can be a big help. And I think sometimes in college, we're kind of told that, this is everything. Your family doesn't understand what's going on outside, but, make them understand, talk to them. And when I did make them understand, even my dad, who always used to be so hard on me, not in a bad way, we got into our fights here and there, but even when he was so hard on me, when I explained to him just how I felt and what was going on and this and that, I couldn't even tell you, like, he completely switched and went to, I'm so proud of you. It was less focused on what I was doing and more on just, am I okay? So I actually think talking to my family did help a lot, because they were kind of removed from the situation.
How did you stay engaged with the team, and then how did you kind of like re-immerse yourself back in the team after all your rehab and stuff?
This also happened in season. So I think it's a little bit different, because if it were to happen out of season, you have more team bonding stuff, and in season you're very focused because, you got games. This was, in March. So it was like right halfway, very pivotal point of our season. So I think that I did feel just kind of totally out of it. I think, unfortunately, I wish I didn't, but that's how I felt in the moment. And I tried a lot of times. Kelly offered a lot of good tips in that sense, where she was like, stay involved. Like when we're listening to plays, I would crutch over and stand on the sideline or sit where everyone was standing. I would try and sit by them. And I really kind of did try, and I think more on my second ACL. Like my first one, I was just pretty much completely crushed and, to a little turtle shell. And after my second one, I kind of tried to, I think, get myself involved more. But anyway, you can, be involved in plays. And I know we did a lot of stuff on the sidelines for treatment and for rehab stuff. So, still had your stick in your hand. But if I were to look back now, that's something that I wish I maybe would have done a little bit differently. I think that, like, you can stay more involved than you think. I think that sometimes you feel like a burden when you're, like, crutching over and you're like, oh, but what about this? And like, you feel kind of like not valued anymore, you know? So that's a mental thing though, where, you know, that's not that the other person feels that way. It's kind of an internal thing that you don't feel of value anymore.
How did you work through those kind of like mental blocks or those, you know, like that self-talk type stuff? Because I know, you know, especially you got recruited to go play, you got yourself the starting position now. It's your freshman year. You're like, yes, I got all this stuff lined up for me. Like I'm going to be an all-star. I'm going to do all these things in 4 years. You know, we're going to win championships, and then you get injured. So, you know, and that was the first injury of kind of a few coming down the road. And you mentioned your second one was a little bit different as far as how you know, went about things on the mental side of things. But, you know, how old were you? Like 18, 17, 18?
Yeah, 18.
Yeah, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. You already think like, oh, I know everything at that age. When in reality, when you get into something like that, then you're like, oh, yeah, I really don't.
Yeah.
And so what is it, you know, like even from the physical, mental, you know, because I think all those things kind of go together. And when you're recovering from an injury, you have to remember that it's not just the PT exercises. It's not just, you know, being on the sideline. Like you said, you were on the sideline, but you weren't really engaged. You weren't really there. And I think, you know, sometimes when kids, adults, older people deal with injuries, they really take that mental side out of the equation. And sometimes that's really the biggest thing to help you kind of get over each hill that you're going to face on this recovery path.
Especially for people who get injured. I mean, I didn't know this at first, but the only way I started to know it was by messing up. So I just want to say that first. Mistakes, whether that was, you know, with friends, in relationships, you know, on the field, off the field, just making all the mistakes. It got way messier before it got better. That fight that you've been fighting your whole life to be a great athlete, it becomes more personal now. And you have to switch the perspective and think about it like this is a gift and you have to now move differently than other people. So once, you know, because I was trying to fight the fact that I was injured for so long. And that's so mentally tiring. Like I was trying to fight so many things about myself, about you'll never be the same, or, you know, you'll never be as fast again. I was just constantly fighting myself, you know, kind of admitting that to myself and then changing the perspective to like, all right, I get to move differently because I've been through something that someone else hasn't, you know, and that could be with anything in life. That could be with anything traumatic that you go through. It's hard, but eventually it becomes an experience and the traumatic part of it kind of gets lost because you start to learn from what happened. So, but that perspective of myself, it had to change. Like, again, it got to the point where I was beating myself up so much that I didn't like who I was as an athlete, as a person. Like, I was like, you can't do any of the things you used to. But the thing was, like, that used to is done. And now I've been through things that are new. So what is new me going to do? And I think I kind of tried to hold on to things or beat myself up instead of just letting go and just like trusting to just push forward. If you just keep going, keep pushing, good things will come. But I was the one holding myself back, and it was mostly mentally.
Yeah, I think that's really good advice for athletes to understand is, you know, if you're injured and it comes to the point where you have to rehab and kind of get back into the game again, you can almost redevelop yourself into a new athlete. Yep. And I'm sure, you know, between all your injuries, you were training a lot different than how you were training prior to that first injury, because now you're like, okay, my body moves different. How can I make it as strong and give it as much fortitude as possible, you know, as I'm moving and while I'm moving, to make sure that I don't get injured again, or make sure that I can do the things that I want to do without feeling pain or feeling injury. So can you talk a little bit about that? Like, what was your injury prevention in between all those things? How did that work for you? And then how were you feeling, you know, like with that next injury?
Yes. So after my first injury in March of 2013 was my first injury. And then I went back to playing that January, and maybe 2 weeks into being back to playing, I I actually this one was more contact where I kind of got pushed from behind a little bit when I was taking an 8-meter, and I tried to stop myself with my left leg before the crease, and I felt like a pop. And it wasn't as severe as a pop, but I just knew something was wrong. It was sharp, it was fiery. And I progressed back into drills. Like, it wasn't like I went from not doing anything and going back in drills. I felt ready. I felt, not as in shape as I last was, but mentally I was even ready because I beat myself up for so long in those months after the surgery. That I was just so ready to play. Like, I was so excited to play. I remember sitting in a meeting with Kelly too, and I remember telling her, like, I don't care as much anymore. And I remember her being like, I'm sorry, what? Like, you don't care?
Like, why are you here?
But I finally, like, understood that kind of the less, like, anxiousness and care I threw on coming back to play and being this person and having this ideal image of what I wanted to be, the more I just was myself.
So when you got pushed on the crease, did that tear? Did you find out that it got torn again?
Yeah, so I went like maybe a week, no, maybe a couple days, but I didn't think that it was anything serious. I was just, after surgery, especially for maybe those who didn't get to talk to someone about it, who's had surgery before, but you feel a lot of weird things body-wise after surgery. So after I felt that sharpness, I ended up seeing my surgeon, and they saw that the meniscus was torn. So I only had the medial part left, and that was retorn because they fixed it, and that retore. And then they said the ACL was loose. So after that injury, I tried my hardest, like everything I had to play. I put a brace on. So the diagnosis after the first surgery, and I came back in January, the diagnosis was torn meniscus and loose ACL. So apparently it wasn't officially torn yet. So I put a knee brace on, and I tried to play on it. That was in January. I tried to play on it until March. So I played for maybe like 2 months on it because the red shirt cutoff was in March too. So I wanted to see kind of how I felt physically, if I could perform how I could perform, and if I could help the team in any way. So I tried, and I failed. I could play. I played in some games. I maybe had like 3 goals in one game, like I was getting in and out, but I also, like, I had a bigger vision for myself, and I didn't see myself as being the best me that I could be. And all I saw what was happening was just me throwing more damage onto my knee.
Yeah.
And I didn't want to do that. I wanted to be the best version of me for my teammates that I could be, and it wasn't that. So it was a really, really hard decision.
So for people that don't know, sometimes when you're playing sports, especially in college, you can take medical red shirt. And so what Espo was talking about was she tried to play on it, and you kind of have like a cutoff date depending on your season, where you have to decide, okay, it's either a certain amount of games or it's a certain, like a date. And then you can essentially get that year of eligibility back. So that's what she decided to do.
Right. So my freshman year, I missed that cutoff, and you're only allowed to play in, there's like a couple of stipulations, like 30% of all contests, like first half of the season, it has to be a season-ending injury. The first time I actually missed that cutoff and played in too many of games. So the second time I was a little more cautious because I wanted to have a season where I could give my all, and I just physically couldn't. And, when you physically can't, it mentally kills you too. I was just so on E that I wasn't even myself, and you could feel that as an athlete.
So let's fast forward a little bit, because you're technically junior and senior year of eligibility, right? So your last 2 years of eligibility were probably would you say your strongest years then?
So, actually junior year was not. Junior year, personally, to me, kind of stunk because I wasn't athletically where I wanted to be. But junior year was kind of the start of a big shift for me. So my junior year, now this is freshman year, major injury, major surgery. Sophomore year, major injury, major surgery. So I was coming off of 2 major surgeries. And, a lot of things happened. I gained weight because you can't do the things that you used to do. I was, I really struggled. I really did. And my junior year, I was still trying to earn a spot on the field. I was out for 2 years. There's been 2 classes that have come in.
Yeah.
I definitely felt like I was just kind of a person in the back, like jumping with my hand up, like, please put me in. I put this.
And this is essentially your like second season now, because that first season was when you got first injury out. That second season, now you're really playing your second season.
Right. So I started playing with a knee brace my junior year, and I hated it so much. And this is when the start of like the switch started to happen, where I was like, no, like I was like, I'm not going to be someone who had bad knee injuries and then you never hear of them again. I started paying way more attention to like nutrition, recovery, all that stuff, whatever little things I needed to do to get myself on the field. That's what I was going to do. If that was going into my coach's office every week and annoying her to no end to figure out what I had to do to get on the field, that's what I was going to do. Actually, one thing Kelly said to me too during that time that I remember, she was like, if you want to be on the field, make me not want to take you off the field. When you think about that as a player, that put the control back into my seat. It took the control, like, because, as an athlete, you always look up to your coach, like, why isn't she playing me? Like, why, what's wrong with her? And a lot of times, this even happened when I was a captain, like, fast forward, when I was a captain, younger girls were like, well, why aren't I playing? Like, are you doing anything outside of this? Like, are you putting in extra effort? Are you, you know what I mean? So when she said that, it put the control back in my seat. And I was like, oh, shoot. If she doesn't want to take me off the field, I just have to make sure that I do everything I possibly can. And that's outside of practice, in practice, on the field, off the field, to make sure that I can do the best me on the field. My senior and 5th year season were my 2 like most normal seasons out of college. So out of 5 years, I had maybe 2 successful, I would say.
Yeah. Well, hey, that's better than just stopping after that freshman year, because you really could have just been like throwing the towel.
Yeah.
I don't want to do this anymore.
It's important to say too that I had so many people tell me I should. I had doctors tell me like, listen, this is a really traumatic injury. Like you're not going to be the same after this. And hearing those words as an athlete, that's just like a straight, right in the face. And I had, so many outside people be like, you had a good run in high school. Like, why don't you get into business? And I had so many people, my parents, you can't do lacrosse forever. Every female lacrosse player, or most female athletes probably hear that. Yeah. So I heard all of those things, and I have girls like DM me on Instagram sometimes, and they're like, everyone's telling me like I'm not going to be able to come back from this injury. And I'm like, no. The first thing is you decide if you want to come back from that injury. If you want to, you will.
And then going even further, so now you graduate from Northwestern.
Yeah.
You're like, how do you get involved into the pro women's lacrosse there?
Yeah, well, I think it's safe to say that I wasn't satisfied after Northwestern. Crazy me, have to keep going. My 5th year season, the end of my actual senior year, so this is 2016, the end of my senior year, we played Louisville. Notre Dame was hosting. We played Louisville in the Sweet 16, and I think Notre Dame in the Elite 8. I got kind of pushed from behind against Louisville at the end of the game, and I had a bone chip right before the Elite 8. So I played on it. I think I put like a little brace on that, whatever they had out by Notre Dame. We figured some makeshift thing out, and I played on it. And I decided for my 5th year season that I wanted to just play on it. I didn't want to try and get surgery because I've had surgeries before. I had 3 before this, and I know how much it takes to come back, and I didn't want to do that at all.
Surgery is essentially controlled trauma in a sterile environment, right? So when you're adding that much trauma over and over and over to something, it can only take so much.
Right.
And sometimes you don't give it that.
You
don't give it that time to heal.
Exactly. I didn't want to open that door again. So my 5th year season, I played with a bone chip on my lateral side and a torn meniscus on my medial side. So following that year, but the thing is also like I was strong. I went to a really great speed and agility place, and they really made muscles around that knee strong. So I was able to do all these things with those injuries.
Gotta find a good PT and strength and conditioning coach, right?
That's my second thing I say to people. I'm like, after you deciding if you want to do this or not, like find yourself someone who you trust, who you think is great, and stick with them. And thankfully I had Juliet Barnes. I have to shout her out. She is a god of an athletic trainer.
So you get into the UWLX and then you win your championship, you get MVP. Tell me what all that felt like after all this trauma that you've been through, after all this mental fortitude, like having to re-strengthen yourself, refigure, refocus, restore, develop, strengthen. How do you get into that? How do you feel winning that championship?
I think that I was so excited to just feel like normal me, to be playing like normal me, to be surrounded by such great talent. Like my first year on the team, we had so many good people on the team. And it was so cool to play with all these different girls. But I was just so excited to be playing and to be back on the field that I don't really think I even thought too much about the whole experience. And I think what kind of speaks to that is even when they did the MVP and like championship ceremony thing up at Lake Placid, I remember when they said my name, like I was like, wait, what? Like me? Why me? You know what I mean? And that was like, it was an awesome moment. And actually it was me and my dad who took a drive up to Lake Placid. So it was a really special moment because I just didn't expect it. But I think it speaks to the fact that like when you do just like appreciate and be grateful for what you do have and just let it flow and stop trying to force and like punching yourself in your head mentally all the time, things like that just happen.
Even now with all this, the coronavirus stuff going on and people having to actually like be introspective and take that, like whole, okay, like what am I going to do with my life? Because, some people lost jobs. Some people aren't able to do the things that they were doing before all this happened. And what's next? Instead of like sitting and being like, oh, poor me, I can't do what I was doing now. Like, what are you going to do like you did to propel yourself forward, to find that dream and that aspiration? So
yeah, and I think that that's different for every person. I think that a lot of our society now kind of plays off the fact of watching other people do things and trying to like emulate what they're doing. There's times where like you need to step off and you need to like just go do you. Like go look in the mirror, and whatever is going to help you might not help someone else, So you always have to remember that not everything is going to be the same for everybody. And then the second thing too is that you just have to be easy on yourself and keep going. Like it sucks, but I keep pushing. I keep going forward, and it's not an overnight thing. It's not like you tear your ACL and the next day you're like, all right, I'm gonna do this. I'm gonna kill this. You don't. You hate everything for a while, and hopefully you don't. Hopefully you have good outlets, and hopefully maybe a video like this will help you just start to move in that direction. You don't have to make this big leap. Just start to move in the direction. So that's always been helpful for me, especially in quarantine right now too, is that I'm like, I don't have to, come out of this. Like someone posted like Einstein created electricity during some kind of book. I was like, please, I'll be lucky if I get through a book.
You don't have.
Yeah,
right.
You know what I mean?
Speaking of books, did you do this one yet? Yeah, you got yours over there?
Right next to my bed.
Nice. So, and this is, like I've done a couple journals now. So this is the Restore Journal. The Develop Journal's out on Amazon as well. Strength Journal's coming. And that's like one of my things that I wanted to try and do in quarantine is finish writing that Strength Journal, but who knows if that's going to happen. Right. But yeah, so in the Restore Journal, it's a lot of like what you've been talking about, right? You have the ability to get in there and talk about your day and just write. And sometimes just like you said, getting things out and just being able to put it in a safe space and then forget about it, and then you can move on to the next thing and the next thing that you want to do, like, and then be able to come back and reflect on it if you want. Like those are all very healthy things.
So much. And I think that it's also, there's a little barrier, like I feel like for myself and probably other people too, I'm sure, but it's like this stuff it is uncomfortable. Even I don't see it as uncomfortable, but for some reason I never want to, open up that journal, or you never want to watch that webinar on like self-reflection, because it makes you mentally work. You know what I mean? And kind of, even as society, we kind of like stray away from that, and, just physical work, if you put in the physical work. But once you like step into your journal, or once you, after that webinar, you know what I mean? After, you're like, wow, whether it was something little, one little journal entry, or you watched an hour-long webinar and did all this self-reflecting, there's times I do the chase with the people at Get More Brave, and it's like kind of a self-reflection.
I love them. They're awesome.
Oh my God, the best people ever.
Yeah.
Highly suggested. But they do a week-long program, or a couple month-long program. And there's days where I'm like, I don't want to do this. I don't want to be pumped up. I don't want to be told to be positive. I don't want someone yelling at me. I don't want to talk about myself and my fears. But after, you're like, wow, okay.
Yeah.
I do this.
Well, and I know you said something about that too before, like your comfort zone can only expand, and when you're more uncomfortable, then that means you're growing. If you're not uncomfortable in doing anything, you're not growing. And to be a champion, you can't just focus on the physical. You can't, because you're never going to get to that next level. You're never going to be that champion if you only focus on the physical. So you have to get out of that zone and get into the mental headspace of things, and the visualization, and getting your whole body right.
I would encourage athletes to just start stepping into it, even if it's just researching it. Research mindset. You could just look up the word mindset, and so many things will come up. Like find a book you like. I mean, educating yourself on it, so that way it's not like someone's telling you. Because when someone tells you to be positive, you're like, why do I have to listen to you? I have to be positive.
You got to find it for yourself.
Yeah. For sure. It is a journey, but don't be afraid to open that barrier, to talk about it, and to like be uncomfortable. And I encourage, like, be weird, be you. Like, we're all different for a reason. So bring what you have to the table and embrace it,
Yeah. Well, Espo, how can people find you, talk to you? How do they do that?
New York girl for life. No, I'm kidding.
It says going to Long Island.
Yeah. No, you can find me on Instagram at Spododo, the True Woman's Chief Ambassador. So we do any kind of, thank you.
Love their stuff.
Yeah, they're incredible. So any kind of like equipment related stuff is always through them. But yeah, I'm on Instagram. Most people, if they do want to contact me, they just shoot me a DM. I always tell every clinic that I do, at the end, I say to every single person, my Instagram handle is this. Follow me and DM me with any questions you have. And don't feel discouraged to reach out or scared to reach out to anyone, especially pro players. We're all here for you guys, for the youth. That's why we do this. That's why we're starting this pro stuff.
You guys can comment on this video as well. I'm sure Espo will be checking that, and I'll let her know too when we get comments. But yeah, so I really want to thank you for being here. Thank you for sharing your story and your whole progression, especially, getting into your championship mindset and really getting to that pinnacle of where you want to be. I really hope, and I know, from as much as we talk to about, your future endeavors and goals, and getting more into the mental side of athletes as well, and doing a lot more mental talks too. So I really appreciate it.
Yeah, of course. I was so happy to do this, and hopefully if anyone has questions or anything, please let us know, because this is so important and you matter.